platform in our Indian diaspora. Nitin Chopra ji, Prime Minister, TV, and Casey Chauhan. It's a Casey TV, and Mr. Farid
from American
agency,
news agency, United States news agency.
Steve Sayyid, Urdu Post. Malik Farouk, he's influencer. Yes, social media. Yes. Sabar Gaya, he's engineer by profession, but from 80s, I think it's easy. He's passionate about cameras and recordings and Vipin and Jaxi. So these are the friends, and I would like to thank Minister for your time for coming in Brampton. We were looking forward to your visit, and normally these gentlemen send someone from their organization, from their platform, to cover event. But today, here that everyone took the time out to cover your visit here in Brampton. Thank you so much, and I'm going to hand over to you. So I had explained everyone what it's all about, and Renee, hand over to you.
Can I just?
Yeah,
I just want to thank all of you for being here, and Shafqat for organizing this. I've been the Minister of Immigration for, it feels like a lot longer than it has been, for a variety of reasons, because immigration has been such an enormously predominant issue, especially it has been throughout the last 10 years, but in the last year and a half in particular. One of the first places I came to was Brampton. Shafqat and his colleagues invited me, and some of the issues that were pointed out here, whether by media, by Shafqat and colleagues in and around Brampton, and Brown as well, are issues that we have addressed over the course of the last 18 months. So that's a very short period of time to make a big ship like immigration move. Big ships take time to move, and they have, and that is thanks to the work that has been done raising awareness, making sure our government reacts to where we see things maybe not being where they should be. But good heavens, we're in a much better place than we were even 18 months ago, and especially in the context of the last 3 months. I think we can also be really happy to be in Canada, but also be very proud to be Canadian. If you hear what the Prime Minister has been saying, what even just regular Canadians have been coming up to me saying how proud they are of being Canadian, and that we need to keep fighting for Canada. And there's a shift in the population that we're seeing with some of the challenges that we see to the south of us, and that's something that we have to keep fighting for you, because it's not us fighting for our jobs, it's us fighting for the people that you represent, provide honest reporting to, and I want to thank you for that. So I'm glad to take questions, Renee. I don't want to take up everyone's time.
Okay.
So just one more thing I just want to mention, because after COVID there was so much demand. Wherever we would go, people were looking for more workers, and then inflation hit, and then things started to change, and we saw different scenario in immigration, which was really challenging when Mark took over, and I think he has done the things needed to be done in order to deal with the current changing situation. But here, when we had 18 months ago, we had a cricket GT20 cricket. Mark came in here, listened to us and community members, and he started implementing things which are based upon the feedback from people. But one thing I just want to mention, we had this asylum seekers, one person who didn't have a space to sleep in shelter. The person passed away. Mr. Miller took action and gave funding right away to Region of Peel. And then we have this facility here in Region of Peel, which is more than its demand. of homeless people here. So that is something I wanted to mention because it's a region of deal, and that's how Minister takes things very seriously. And actually, Mayor Brown has written an article last week, and he has mentioned Minister Amar and his willingness to address issues right on time. So just wanted to mention that. Sorry.
No, that's wonderful.
Over to you.
Thank you both. We have just under an hour for questions and answers, so I might ask MP Ali and Minister to try and keep answers tight so that we can all get to questions. We're going to start with the first question with this gentleman right here.
My last question.
Last
Go ahead and
question.
go for the first.
Yes.
Okay, well then we'll go to the gentleman
Yes,
here
ma'am.
last, please. Thank you.
Yes.
If you could please say your name.
Yeah, I close it.
If you could please say your name and the outlet.
Yes, Badar from Geo TV and Canada TV. Is Liberal Party changing regarding immigration policy, because you are taking some strict actions, strict decisions about students and all other?
Yeah, look, when the Prime Minister asked me to take over the immigration department, he knew that there were some difficult decisions that needed to be made. Even questioning some of the work that we had done previously, and for the reasons that Shafqat mentioned, that we came out of COVID with a perfect storm of structural problems in the supply system, provinces, businesses, chambers of commerce, demanding, colleges, universities, demanding more people in Canada. And we adjusted for, I think, for the right reasons. And even then we were increasing our permanent residency is the golden jewel and the golden jewel in the crown that we have in Canada, because it's the best and the brightest that we choose according to a point system that is the envy of a lot of countries because they don't have that. And it allows us to increase the GDP immediately. That has done a couple of things. It's made the workforce younger, which is extremely important. The Bank of Canada has pointed that out. The International Monetary Fund has pointed that out compared to countries that we compare ourselves to. So we've done a good job there. What I would say is, in some areas we didn't get it just quite right, and the international students in some other areas, the system got overheated. Too many people came in, and you know, I fault myself for trusting provinces and colleges and universities for too long. I think as we look at the immigration system, it's important to have a managed, controlled immigration system, especially when you get more ambitious, because you're talking about larger flows, and it means that if you're not getting that right, we are not serving the people right that are coming in, that are the most vulnerable, that need housing, that need the services that a country like Canada, the best in the world, is providing. And the volumes were ones that we needed to adjust. So the first step I took, obviously, with respect to international students and temporary residents, which has now become 7% of the population for a variety of reasons, welcoming Ukrainian refugees, Afghan, Syrian refugees. There's lots of reasons why we did that, very good ones. But I think what we could have got better with coordinating provinces and our own internal departments is making sure that the wraparound services and the needs to accommodate those people, integrate them into the workforce, we could do better. So the decision to reduce those numbers was one that I think made sense for both the integrity of the immigration system, but also to make sure that we were not overcorrecting, which could cause a recession, which could, I think, fuel anti-immigrant sentiment. We see anti-immigrant sentiment going around the world, and Canada is unique as it stands out in being still open to immigration, but a managed system that people can be proud of. No more is it felt than in places like Brampton, places like Surrey, places that are immigrant rich, and it's felt by the communities themselves. So again, that was why it was important for me to come to Brampton and listen to some of the challenges that people were facing. The realization is that unfortunately the federal government can't do it alone, and these adjustments take time with consequences that come with them. And having a fair and firm system is very important, because Canadian citizenship, permanent residency, is something that is valued. We don't want to dilute that value. We want people to be proud to be Canadian, especially now. But it comes with a sense of what those privileges are and the rights that come with Canadian citizenship. And the last thing I want to do is dilute the value of that. It's important to be proud, it's important to be Canadian. And those are some of the reasons why I think those adjustments in the context were important to be made. We don't want to treat people in a cruel fashion and in a heartless fashion. And that is some of the balance that we were trying to strike. Immigration has been a topic in every single election. What I don't want is one party taking that and turning it against people that, frankly, don't look like me, in a way that's not fair, because the lines get confused quite quickly, and people start targeting more people than what they're truly trying to get at. It doesn't mean that and as I said before, I don't pretend that we've done everything right, but my job, Shafqat's job, is to be honest with Canadians where we've gotten things wrong and to adjust and to listen to Canadians. So I think that's what we've tried to do in the last 18 months. We'll continue to slowly ramp down permanent residency numbers to a number that is fair within the next 3 years, and then reconsider, which is what I have to do almost every year as I adjust what I have to do in levels plan in the fall. So sorry for that again. Long answer. It's a good intro for the rest of the people.
Yes, lot of question answered.
Yeah.
My name is Shafqat from Radio Pakistan, Toronto and Toronto CCTV. After the second era of Donald Trump, they are planning a mass deportation from America. So what Canadian government is planning, because a lot of students people are here, they're not showing up in the colleges. A lot of, you already mentioned 7% illegal people who are overstaying.
7% temporary residents.
Temporary residents.
They're not illegal. Most of them are legal.
Okay, so there's a lot of illegal, like who are where they are not, like they stay overstaying here. So with a specific plan for the deportation, government is planning for that, because you only have 1 month for the tariff thing, but the deportation thing again came from the other side.
Yeah, I mean, look, you won't see Canada doing what the Trump administration is doing, and nor will we be adopting that rhetoric with respect to immigrants generally. It doesn't mean that we aren't firm when it comes to people that are here that are not authorized to be here. Canada is a rule of law. People that are here are entitled to adjudication of their case, but if you are here in an irregular fashion and don't have a right to stay, you need to leave or you will be removed. There's plenty of people whose visas end that do leave voluntarily. To the extent they take the decision not to respect the law, Canada will remove them. Last year, as an example, we had the largest number of removals in recent history. It's not something that we broadcast
Not in the news, yeah.
but it does take time. It takes time and it takes resources. So making sure that we have a system where when we welcome people, they understand their rights, they understand their obligations that they need to leave. Just as a tourist would be expected to leave on expiration of their visa, an international student that does not have the right to be here is expected to leave. People are here, for example, on a student visa to study. They're not here with a guarantee to become permanent residents or a guarantee to become Canadian. They need to understand that before they come to the country. In fact, they undertake to do so in the documents that they sign in order to get their visas. I'm not naive. I do know that people try to see hope and think because Canada is the best country in the world, they may have a hope to stay. In some circumstances, because our education system is one of the best in the world, we would expect some people to stay because we are getting some very, very bright people as part of the workforce, already trained, starting their integration, but it can't be for everyone. What I saw with the volume that we were seeing in 2023 was just unsustainable numbers to integrate people into our permanent residency level, so we had to adjust accordingly. And indeed, those visas are down about 45% this year, which is very important because there were some actors that were profiting from the ecosystem that was created, making lots of money. And frankly, no one was really paying much attention to what happened once people graduated. If you get a certificate in automotive engineering or a certificate in construction, you would hope that the person would get a job in that area, but you would not expect them to be in a restaurant serving people, because why spend $40,000 a year to do it? It's not fair to the kids themselves, and they're very young. So these are all things that we are working on. It's not perfect, but the rhetoric of deportation that we're seeing to the south of us is somewhat alarming. It's their country. I've had discussions with the border czar that dealt with our southern border, which is their northern border. The U.S. Sends more asylum seekers to us than we send to them, even with last year included. I have shut down a number of the visas that people got in order that they were using to go to the US by 89% since last June to December. So what we've done internally has worked. But if the US wants to have a managed border with Canada, they're going to have to work with us. If they want, if they don't, we expect them to prevent asylum seekers to come up through the US into Canada, because that affects my ability to manage the immigration system. And if they expect us to prevent people from going south, they have to work with us on, what is the safest border in the world? 400,000 people cross every day. So those irregular crossings need to end. So there's work on both sides of the border, and regardless of our differences politically with what's going on in the U.S., we actually have to work together at that border.
Right.
Thank you, sir. My name is Alisha from Digital TV. I have a question. Just is it true or false? Last couple of years, especially student visas issued, there was not a criminal check. So is it true or just rumor?
Watch your head. Are you okay?
So because mostly all
that isn't true. There's been a lot of discussions about the requirement of getting specific police certificates. There is a lot of questions around the reliability of police certificates, but for every international student, there is a requirement to do biometrics, which is checked with our international partners. This is not something we did 10 years ago. It's been phased in over the last few years. So that's very important, and we check that with our security partners internationally. We also have a progressive method of assessing candidacies, and there are security checks that are done. That has gotten confused in some public narratives that have been spread in and around the use of police certificates. You can understand how a country that is not necessarily the most reliable security partner would not necessarily be the most reliable country to be providing police certificates. So that has gotten confused in some of the public narrative, but people should not think that there are not security checks done on every single student that comes to the country. But there are security screens, including biometrics, which is something that was not done 10 years ago. Are we safer now than we were 10 years ago? The way we screen people coming to the country, the answer to that is yes.
Thank you very much.
It's not a complaint, but
Complaints are okay.
we have been interacting with most of the Minister of Immigration since Mr. Jason Kennedy even before that. Mr. McCullum, Mr. Ahmed Hussain, and Shino, Mr. Fraser. But it is almost, you are Minister for almost 1.5 years. First time we are interacting with you and you are listening to Brenton. So we have been giving feedback to all of previous ministers that most of these kids who are coming from other parts of the world, they are here for permanent immigration. They want to stay in Canada. So we were alarming them, we were giving them this warning that please keep in mind that they are not going back. And we were always being told that, you know what, they are here for good qualification, education, and they will go back. They are $25 billion industry, they do so much to our country, they contribute so much, but all of a sudden, since you have become minister, the government has taken the U-turn. Cut, and whatever we are saying, maybe it's a political decision, we don't know, that there is a big human drive in the community. Hundreds of thousands of these students are not here. Many of them are without status. They don't want to go back. They have mental issues. They don't have work to do. Most of these colleges are now shutting down. There are mushrooming of these private colleges all of a sudden. And many of them were recruiting them without any legal way. So there's a chaos in the community right now. Today we just saw news that a girl has not been found for the last 1 month. Every single day, these students are committing suicides. So much problem we can see in our community right now. So I don't know how the government is going to deal with them. Are they going to send them back, or how they will rehabilitate them here? We don't know. And now there's another big challenge for these two students is that when you took the decision that they have to appear for IELTS again, many of them are not able to get that. And now they are without status, whether they will be allowed to stay here or not, we don't know. So such a mess now. You are trying to clear it up, but who created it and why created it, we don't know.
Now look, I think first and foremost, it's important to say this, and I don't think I can say it enough, that someone that is here and is not entitled to stay needs to go home, and that's the reality of things. The solution is not to give visas to absolutely everyone simply because they don't want to leave. This is what they agreed to do.
But they were promised, Minister.
They were made promises. I understand that people have made promises to them, and I think that is where the human aspect of this comes into play. What I've tried to do within my department is to make sure, because of the labor, because there is some skilled labor and people are qualified in a lot of fields where we need people, is to make sure that we focus a little more on domestic draws into our permanent residency pools. I've directed my department, I've directed provinces to focus more on the PMP draws internally instead of going abroad and bringing in even more folks where you have this talented pool here. That doesn't clear up the entirety of the situation that we see today. The expiration of postgraduate work permits is something that we are monitoring closely over the course of the next few years, and it's going to be a rough ride. Part of cleaning up this challenge that we see will mean that people's hopes will be dashed to some extent. But again, no one was guaranteed automatic permanent residency, and ideally, you would have the bad actors pay for the promises that they falsely created. Someone has made money along this. It wasn't the federal government, other than indirectly through taxes. Universities, colleges have all made money. Provinces have made money. The books in Ontario have been balanced on the backs of international students. I'm not inventing this as a matter of political rhetoric. It's clearly been said in some of the budget analyses that have been provided with respect to the province of Ontario. That's a reality that I'm going to have to deal with the Ontario government and have an honest conversation about how we fix this. But it isn't up to the federal government to clean this up entirely because we didn't create this in the first place. Probably should have been better oversight. That's water under the bridge. And again, the criticism is that I've leveled on myself is I probably trusted these people too long. But it's something that has ended, and we'll continue to monitor. If the federal government has to take more measures with respect to these institutions, I know some are closing down, probably for the right reasons. It will. In a federal system like Canada, provinces have jurisdiction, but with that jurisdiction comes some responsibility that I feel hasn't been exercised appropriately. But I'm here to do it. Sadly, or hopefully, depending how you see my role, my job isn't just to stamp 500,000 visas a year. It looks at the entire ecosystem, looks at needs, looks at job creation, job loss. It looks at the intellectual capacity of Canada, the societal acceptance of bringing people into the country, and we adjust accordingly. Sometimes we get it right, and indeed I think on balance over the last 10 years we've gotten it right, and sometimes we don't get it as right as we should have.
My follow-up question is that what we feel is that the government's biggest decision which was wrong was that bringing these grade 12 students, which was too young to bring it here. I mean, in a metropolitan kind of a culture, they were never able to adjust themselves, but that's fine. We were having hundreds and thousands of these students, and the perception was they're going to stay here, settle here, and then government took a challenge of 500,000, PRs every year. That was very aggressive decision at that time. Then they took again the decision that no, we are not going to bring them. They will be cutting that, reducing the numbers. Housing demand at that time, it was looking that yes, we need lots of houses, lots of demand, and all of a sudden, every provincial government was aggressive to build more and more homes. Now prices are down. We don't know how much demand we have. So there is an imbalance in all these sectors now. Immigration, housing, everything. So how the government is going to deal with that?
Yeah, I think in housing, it's a problem that's been created over the last 3 decades. You can't solve it over the course of a few years. That is just the reality. The federal government's been out of federal housing for about 30 years. It's only Justin Trudeau and the programs that we put into place that have started to address the supply of housing and federal government's involvement in this. probably a failure across the system to deal with that, and it's a bit of a problem that's been in the making for, regardless of the government. It's been in place for about 3 decades. I think regardless of these sort of, I'm not saying I don't take them seriously by calling them blips, but the market goes up and the market goes down. I think the need for sustained federal investment will be important so that we don't cause this in another 10 years when people suddenly say, well, where was the federal government? It is a provincial responsibility. It doesn't mean the federal government shouldn't be investing it. A government like ours is active in making sure that we're in the business of supply. With mortgage rates coming down, with interest rates coming down, you see that attractiveness and the ability of people to be able to buy houses going up a bit. There's a lag, you don't know yet. But you also see the price line of houses kind of stabilize as a result or even going up. So we do have to adjust to that. I think in my role, the most important thing and decision that I took is what economists look a little more intimately than more people expect, which is what the population progression is. And in the last levels plan, that is much more complete than any other levels plan that we've ever provided. One, because we fold in temporary residents into the numbers, was the stabilization of the population growth and even a population drop in year 3, if our plan does bear out through the last 3 years. So that'll be very important for me. People making, it'll reduce the number of housing starts that we need to generate. It's more or less confirmed by the Parliamentary Budget Officer, in fact as close as we've ever gotten when it comes to that type of scrutiny. So that's a positive sign, but doesn't mean that it absolves us from our need to continually invest. And I think I would expect the next leader of the Liberal Party to make those commitments as well. I think we've learned our lessons from getting out of the business for about 30 years.
Okay, thank you. I just want to remind everyone we have about 25 minutes left, so just be mindful.
20.
Yeah.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No questions for Shafqat. He's
Good gentleman.
Once you are here,
you guys see him all the time.
he's available all the time.
Dear colleague.
This is Nitin Chopra from Prime Asia TV. One thing is clear, like everyone's question, that there was a mess and there is a mess in the immigration, and that's why government is on the path to fix that issue. As everybody mentioned, Mr. Sani mentioned very relevant points. As per the report, National Post reports that 20,000 plus Indian international students, they failed to register in their colleges after arriving in Canada. The Canadians raised concern of fraud. What happened to them? Whether they crossed over to US or are they still here in Canada? Because many of the colleges, their application of the asylum seeker is very high. International student who is here for studies is applying for a threat on him in his own country is very shocking. Then same-sex marriages applications are very high in males and females. Those trends are going on. So these are the shocking trends. We have become a country of laugh by the world that these things happening here. Our reputation has gone down as a Canada. So who takes that responsibility of this mess, and where are those 20,000 plus students?
Look, I think it's collective responsibility. That number that you're quoting is a bit of a trailing indicator, but it is one of the reasons why we made a number of these policy adjustments and clamped down on the system in general, and ready to do more. But I've done 2 waves of clampdowns in the last little while. We've seen results where it has prevented a large number of instances of fraud. Verification letters are very important. There's a lot of responsibility, frankly, on the universities that are welcoming people to take responsibility for these people that are paying exorbitant fees just to show up in Canada. It doesn't make sense that if you're paying that much money, you suddenly turn your back when the person doesn't show up in your classroom, right? And that is a Canadian state doesn't follow everyone's comings and goings. That's the reality. I don't track you. Just the conspiracy theorists think we track you guys. No, we don't, and that's the reality. I'm not being cavalier about this, but the reality is that they did get a visa. They were expected to go study, and for one reason or another, there's a large number of people that didn't do so. They may have abused of the ability to go work in whether it's underground or legitimately, and that's something I think we need to follow a little more closely. It isn't just the federal government, it's provincial governments, it's institutions that have perhaps even entertained false hope. People have paid a lot of money just to get in here, and then if they disappear, it's not right. You're expected to study, and if you're not you shouldn't stay here. And that's why some of the clampdown has been so important, to make sure that we are actually getting in legitimate students into this country. And I think we've seen that largely. I'm prepared to do more if need be, if I see this trend continuing. My sense is that it has dropped. Is it perfect? That I think remains to be seen. It's very difficult right now for even some of the top institutions that weren't doing all that much wrong. It's more difficult to recruit. I think we need to make sure that the Canadian brand does focus on excellence, on quality, and less quantity. And clearly, I'm ready to do more, but it'll require a rebranding exercise, but also a rework with universities and colleges and provinces. Important to make that responsibility, to make sure that we are following people more closely in their academic journey. Because again, we're talking about a younger set of the population, our kids, that we need to follow closely and make sure that they're being properly accompanied when they come into Canada legitimately, including during the, I'll say another thing about the asylum-seeking numbers, including during the academic journey, but also after, if they are working, to make sure that it's actually matching with the education they got and the promise that they were implicitly given. On the asylum-seeking numbers with students, the trend, I'd be foolish to say we didn't expect the trend to increase given the volumes. We see some of the institutions that are closing some of their programs down now had the higher number of asylum seekers. But let's bear in mind that, again, if you follow the money, those institutions took the money. Now the asylum-seeking process is one that it weighs financially on the backs of the government of Canada. I'm prepared to do more with illegitimate claims. It doesn't make sense that if you come here, spend a year, and you didn't have the conditions in your country to cause you to be an asylum seeker on day one, that a year later or 2 years later, unless there was something that happened in your home country or some individual circumstance that made you fear for your life, which is often rare, that you should be entitled to a process that would drag on and on. So I'm prepared. Parliament is prorogued currently. I am prepared to introduce a bill in Parliament, or even take other measures, whether it's by regulation or others, to make sure that those cases in particular are dealt with in a more efficient fashion.
Those
yes.
were in, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, follow?
Yeah, but make it short because it's time.
Thank you.
So, President Trump, whatever he is doing for US for the deportation is good for America. They are handcuffed, they are sent back to their home countries, and that is good for their country. Indian External Affairs Ministry said that they are going to accept any illegal person across the globe. They are ready to accept that. Here in Canada, we have many undocumented, out of status, illegal, and moreover that, those who are repeatedly criminals, means 75 charges on them without status. Still, they have not been deported. Our Milton jail is full of 80+% of South Asian people, including Indians. Why they are into jails for so long time? Why no action being taken? Because that is a loss to the taxpayers, and immigration gets a bad name.
I don't disagree with you that these cases, they need to be dealt with fairly but swiftly. I don't have the facts about the Milton jail. I wouldn't speculate on it, but certainly given what we've done last year, it is important for people to get an expedited process. I won't comment on what the U.S. is doing. We're following it closely. Some of it looks the way it looks to all of you, but I mean, we need to take care of our business.
Can I add into that one? Look, our judicial system, that those cases are under provincial jurisdiction. It's up to province and the courts, they have to decide their cases. In last 3 years, 54% of the cases have not been addressed or either withdrawn or is dismissed. The people who are in jail, it's a provincial responsibility. We cannot deport them unless case decide their case. If there are charges, they have charges. That's what the Constitution we have. So I think it's the people who are there. Once their case has been finalized, then I think it's we are able to send them back. But Minister has taken very swift action, and he's. I mean, these are the things already under consideration. That the person was here, came for study, but never gone to school, or there's no consistency or criminal activity. obviously it will be dealt with accordingly. So we're running, we only have 10 minutes, so just want to ask, we have 2 people came in. Yeah, I just want to, we have Arfa Muzaffar, she's here, she runs radios 770 AM, very senior journalist, and
Red FM, third.
oh yeah, Red FM. Yeah, so they joined us late. So can we have it quick and short, not long questions,
So
please?
hi Mark, this
I'm gonna
is
give
Casey
everyone an
Chauhan here
opportunity.
from KCXL Media. It's really nice seeing you. I in fact have 2 very small questions. The first one is that immigration in itself is not being fairly done spread over countries, especially Pakistan, like deny them, not even the student but the visit visa itself. So why is that been continuing till now not taken care of? The second question is, the very statement that Canada becoming the 51st state, if not the tariffs are implemented, the rumors, this is the talk of the town, and this is the immigration would be of course affected because of this thing. So how do you really have?
Yeah, the
answer on
51st
that
state
issue?
stuff is not going to happen. It's really
Yeah.
We're all Canadian. We need to reject that. So I'll leave it at that. I think everyone here is proud to be Canadian. And
Yes.
There isn't a
Yeah.
chance. There's not a chance in hell to become
Yeah.
American.
Okay.
Look, my 2 kids were born. 2 of my kids were born in New York City. They're still proud Canadians. It's not that we don't have kinship and love for our neighbors and the American people. We just disagree wholeheartedly with the rhetoric that's coming from the administration. I don't agree with you that it is not fair. I do understand some of the challenges of the processing center in Islamabad. It is currently staffed up more than it has been before as part of our commitments. I would say this, though, that as part of some of the measures that I've had to take since, I would say, less than a year, we have had to be more stringent on visa processing and visa permits. That has affected visa processing, not the effective ability of the personnel to do their jobs, but it's resulted in more rejections from countries like Pakistan. It's resulted in a significant number of rejections in countries like India and Bangladesh, where we had seen disproportionate claims of asylum seeking in comparison to the numbers of visas that were, in theory, for people that were to come here as tourists. So sometimes we don't necessarily get everything right. It's not a right to come to Canada as a tourist. It's really a privilege. People have to respect the terms of the visa, and I did ask my department to be a bit more strict on some of the issuances of the visas, and that has impacted countries where there have been higher levels of asylum seeking through the I believe what is an abuse of the visa system. It's no surprise to anyone that in the large numbers of folks that have come from the north to the south into the U.S. and that the U.S. has seen and complained to us about, even though they send us larger numbers. A lot of folks have come through airports at Montreal and at Pearson, and that's not right. I mean, we need to be able to have a proper control over the issuance of our visas. Those are changes that I've been able to effect over the last 6 months, and that's probably some of the stuff that you're seeing. But I wouldn't say that it's unfair. It's the result of the, I would say, historic volume that you're facing with people wanting to come to Canada.
So, Minister,
Yes,
give a clarity, you said you have more staff in Islamabad.
Visa
We've had-
processing center is not opening. There's a lot of years.
So it is working. It is up and working. It is not sort of on the same scale of what we are seeing in Manila. But the assurances that I have from my staff is that we have the number of personnel working in Islamabad. There are other files that get processed through our global network, and I would say even with respect to any
But
country.
there's not a status of visa processing center in Islamabad.
Well, we have personnel that's now accredited. It did take time. There were some issues with the accreditation of some of the personnel that we sent over, but they are there. To the best of my knowledge, they are working.
Is there we heard that the government of Pakistan had some issues with that. They were not providing.
Initially, there were some challenges with visas, but I think that's resolved.
Okay.
It was there, because we had, Ambassador Janjua, I had a meeting with him, there was an issue.
Okay.
That's largely
So,
resolved.
but it's not, it's over.
Yeah. Just very quick
Okay,
and small
Mr.
question.
Lodi- So I request, we only have 10 minutes.
We can do
so
two
please
more.
keep,
Yes.
keep
One
it
question
short.
at a
Yes. So, have. Yeah. Yes.
My question, my name is Shafqat from Young and Snow News. My question is, two tenures you already done, but still in the advisory to Pakistan is what your opinion, because it's not for advisory finished to other government or other party. Is hopefully Liberal parties maybe finish this advisory in Pakistan.
Okay, so you're talking about the
Travel
Pakistan
advisory.
advisory.
Travel advisory.
Travel advisory.
Pakistan is still on the travel advisory of Canada.
Yeah, I doubt that is something that is
global
administered
affair.
by global affairs.
Global affair. That's not
Um, and it's again, it's about the safety of people.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I don't like comparing one country to another, and you may say one country is more safe
Okay.
than the other.
What are the numbers?
It's one that is, it's one that's determined by Global Affairs Canada to make sure that we're taking care of people traveling to those countries.
Okay, proceed with-
Yes. What are the numbers of immigrants you are expecting this year, and what about the parental and grandparents application?
So as part of the levels announcement that I made in October, we did a reduction of 20%.
20%.
So that translates from the high of 485,000 permanent residents this year. It was going to go up to 500,000. We dropped it to 395 this year.
390.
And then I believe next year about 380 and then 365. So, it's a reduction of 20%. That does affect families. We've increased parents, grandparents, families, spouses, children category significantly under our government. We had to reduce that category as well. Whenever you have to reduce categories, it's a difficult decision. We had to do that on our humanitarian component and the economic portion. Just for everyone's benefit, it's about a 60-20-20 split. But everyone had to be affected by that. So that's the reality, and I think within that category, prioritizing spouses and such was very important in there. It means that some people will have to wait a bit longer, but it made sense in the context of reducing levels where the country is telling us to please adjust the volume levels so we can have a better control of migration in Canada.
Okay, Afrabadi, please.
Honorable Minister, thank you very much for giving Shafqat. Thank you very much for giving us a chance to meet the Honorable Minister. My two questions. The first question is, I understand immigration is mess at the moment, and especially when we talk about the students, all the students from India. Unfortunately, those students, they were given a bait by the those who brought them. They provided them with the fake documents. What is the system, our system, that those agents who brought these students or who were working behind, they made all the fake documents, and our system could not verify that those documents are fake, right or wrong. For example, this admission where this man, he brought around 700 students from India, and their admission was in one of the finest colleges here. What is the problem with our system that we couldn't find, and our system couldn't find that those documents are fake documents? I have a recorded interview with me where this boy said his father is a peon. He was in a school, some agent who brought him, he did grade 10. The man who brought him, he provided his master's certification. They did not have no money in the account, and he provided a statement of around 700,000 in his account, came from India. I do have that recording. What is the problem with our system that we couldn't find that those documents were fake? Number one. Number two, when Canada invites people from around the world, and I believe their policy should be same for all the countries, especially when I spoke to some of the universities here, where universities say they don't want to invest on the students from Pakistan, because in Pakistan this process is all automated, artificial intelligence based, where there is no personal interview of a thing, no human interaction. It's all machine-generated question answers and whatever the procedure. Shafqat, you must know about it. Why this discrimination between two neighboring countries in Pakistan and in India? And this is something which is brought to my notice directly from the universities here in Canada. Because they say, those universities say, we don't want to waste our time and on the Pakistani students, because the government system to bring students from Pakistan does not work for Pakistan.
Just for clarification, there's a couple of things that I did, including recently removing the student direct stream, just because the reforms that I've made to the system that included addressing the issue that you've highlighted very eloquently, frankly, about fraud and verifying application letters and making sure that the institutions that are welcoming them, we are actually checking that these are true letters of verification. It was one of the first reforms that I made. So that has been able to catch a good chunk and clear instances of fraud. There was a statistic that came out a few months ago that clearly said we were able to catch clear instances of fraud, some of the most egregious, fake letters, etc. That wasn't being verified as well as it should be, and that was a shortcoming in the system that allowed some people to come here and show up with this letter, mostly unwittingly, thinking that they were going to University X, whatever it was, and it allowed bad actors to thrive. I've currently given more powers to the College of Immigration Consultants to crack down on this. This is a recent regulatory change. Those are people within Canada that are regulated. It's a little more difficult to catch instances of fraud that are occurring outside the country. Indeed, there are reports that the government of India has cracked down on one particular instance of that, and so be it, they should. Illegality is illegality. You know, we have to make sure that we are cracking down both internally and making sure that the conditions don't exist externally, so that we don't catch it before people come here and are duped. The cases that came up under Minister Fraser were ones that were investigated to make sure that the students involved were not complicit, and those that weren't were allowed to stay. That is a process that is, I think, largely complete. But again, these were shortcomings in the system where we saw people exploiting vulnerabilities, and mostly vulnerabilities of kids that weren't aware of the process for the most part in coming here. And I believe that largely that is caught. But I think what I've learned in the last year and a half is that we have to remain vigilant, because there are always ways to work around the system. On instances of fairness, there's a number of sources for where that perception can arise, notably in, I would say, universities and colleges have been going to one or two source countries and constantly going back to the well on that. We expect a diversity of students. It doesn't mean that Indian students aren't some of the best and brightest. Indeed, one of the largest populations in the world, you would expect students to come from India. But what I've asked universities and colleges to do is, you need to put a little more effort into the price of acquisition, to use probably an expression that is entirely fitting, but you have to be able to invest more in the talent that you're bringing here, and that includes going to more countries and expanding your resources. And that is a message that is ongoing as universities and colleges are asked to not only rebrand, but change their pitch to attract people from around the world from different countries. There will always be students from India, there will always be students from Pakistan. That fairness and balance is totally up to me, but it is one that I am watching closely, because there are students that are coming from those countries that could be really important to contribute.
Thank you, sir. But the question is, the universities say that the rejection in Pakistan, because of the automation of the system, that is more, so they don't want to invest.
I'd have to verify those rates and check
Please,
that.
please.
It's something that it isn't unique if that is truly the case. There are countries where you do have higher rejection rates. We are seeing rejection rates that are higher across the board. I think with the new set of reforms, it will make a little more of a playing field. I wouldn't necessarily draw a conclusion, although I wouldn't criticize people for making the comment, but I wouldn't draw a direct conclusion based on how many people are on the ground now, because a lot of our decision is currently through our global system. 90% of some of the processing is done without, well, obviously putting foils on passports is important, but a lot of the decision making is not made in the country in question.
Thank you.
Minister has a flight.
Just one.
We have to call it there.
Minister has a flight, and like it's we're already 2 people are still there. What was your quickly?
No, that's okay. That's okay. But my question is, I understand Indian students, they are being punished. They did wrong. They must be involved. But what did government do to punish the culprits who ruined these families and young boys and girls? So that's okay. You can answer it.
Okay. So
There are some investigations ongoing.
So,
I can't talk about their completeness.
Okay, Minister, short, brief. I have 2 people. I don't want to turn them down. We have a person from Red FM. Please brief and quick, and then one more person. She will be the last.
Taranji from Red FM, you have just said like you are making some decisions, reforms. In your last statement, in your past statement, you said that you are going to eliminate the 50 points of LMIA. So are these decisions legislative decisions or the administrative decisions? As we all know, Mr. Trudeau has prorogued the parliament. How these decisions are going to?
It's a really good question. I don't need to go to parliament to remove the 50 points from MIA. That's coming in the spring.
And about the other reforms that you are talking about?
So, most require, I would say, because I have significant discretion, perhaps not as much as people think, a lot of the decisions that I take do not need me to go to Parliament. Sometimes it's important to check with legislators. Were I to do dramatic asylum reform in Canada, that would need to go to Parliament. I would say, unfortunately, I did try some asylum reform last June, and the Conservatives, the Bloc Québécois, and the NDP opposed it. So we are where we are now, despite some efforts that we've made. I plan to do more if I can if Parliament comes back, but I wouldn't necessarily, if you want to blame prorogation, you can look at the last 6 months. You can see the stalling that Pierre Poilievre put into place. And frankly, he's been irresponsible on immigration, promising visas to everyone that he talks to, depending on what community he goes to. So that's highly irresponsible, or more flights to India, or whatever he seems to go around promising, depending on what radio station he goes on. I'm trying to be honest with people, and if they don't like the news that I have, then they can make the decision they want. But in order to be a politician that is responsible to Canadian people, you have to be honest to people, and I don't see that with Pierre Poilievre. Again, on asylum reform, if I need to do something dramatic, I will have to go in front of Parliament. But when it comes to the LMIA, I don't have to.
Thank you.
Okay, the last one, please.
Thank you.
Quick and short, please.
Yes, definitely. My question was for recognition for foreign credentials. Many skilled immigrants, and especially in healthcare and engineering, people are here, but they are not able to get their credential recognized. So what is being done to simplify and speed up the process so they can contribute to Canadian workforce?
Super important in healthcare, and even in construction. We have a very, very regulated country for a lot of good reasons, for safety reasons, for make sure Canadians, when they're getting healthcare, is some of the best in the world. There are some provinces that are working to make sure they break down some of the barriers. I think that is very, very important. You know, despite everything I try and say, these are responsibilities that are provincial, and I think it's in their interest to do it. And I've seen some hopeful work done in Alberta. I've seen some work being done in BC and in some other provinces to make sure that the people that we are recruiting abroad, with the skill set they have and the training they have, can work a little more seamlessly in Canada than they have been able to in the past, and not take a pay cut in order to do something that they are overqualified to do. We're not there yet. It's not perfect. I would beware of any federal politician that comes in front of you and says, I have a magic wand that can wave, because provinces do have their responsibilities and jurisdiction. But there is some work being done with the provinces, and it doesn't mean the federal government should wash their hands of it. We have a number of initiatives where we bring in provinces and we say, well, if you want these people, you have to make sure that you eliminate the barriers so that they can properly work in the jobs that they've been promised. But I wouldn't say we're there yet perfectly. We compete with other countries for talent that don't have those barriers. So it isn't like it's a luxury for us. it's something that we have to make sure that we are being competitive on without compromising important safety reasons that create that regulation in the first place.
Definitely, I believe it should be easier.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.